Много прекрасных высоких учений, как с горем бороться, как зло победить, но много и много.
My name is Vera Cannigan. This is my husband, Walter Cannigan. I was born Vera and Walter in Grand Forks. We've lived in the Doukhobor tradition and even originally in Doukhobor villages for many, many years. And our heritage and Doukhobor life concept and understanding has played a very important role. I was born into a very close family, and I grew up in a small village where two families lived together, and we had many, many grandmothers, all living in their own quarters all around the village, and we felt very, very secure in their love. We were all considered very special. And I loved our Doukhobor Pasalmi right from the beginning, and my great-grandmother used to sing 50, and she could recite 100, and she taught me many, many, many Pasalmis, so I still love my Doukhobor upbringing.
Well, I was born in Utyshenia, and our family never lived in a village. We lived in the Belly Dome. So, and at a younger age, at that time, the people used to bring seeds, and it was a going thing to bring seeds and do the eating. So I used to sweep up the floors at an early age. The family lived in the front part of the Belly Dome, and we used to have a kitchen in another building. In the Belly Dome, it was just living quarters downstairs for the grandfather and father, and the bedrooms were upstairs. But everything was huge because it was a huge building. So, and we used to ride from the upstairs. We used to ride the banisters downstairs, like it was a long way down type of thing. So it was fun, but when the airport come along, so they took all the wood, and as I grew up, I was helping grandfather with the hayloft and the barn, and so we built a house for grandfather and grandmother, and when that was finished, we started on the father's house where I lived. After we moved from the airport, we had to move towards the mountain, and we started building there because the water was there. Father and his age of people, they did the carving of the ladles. Now it's much easier. There's a machine. You can scoop it out with a machine. And then when I retired, I went into box building. So the wood, basically, I had a lot of birch trees, so I cut them down, and as you can see, the tops are lovely, and it's from the birch that I grew. So, and each piece is different. So I keep collecting as I cut the trees down, or people bring me wood. I use all the wood that I can, the small pieces, and everything goes. Like, see, for the legs, it's small pieces, and or for the outside.
Well, both of us were very active in the 60s in our USCC youth movement. So I call it the golden age of the 1960s. And in those years, there were many youth in the area. Most hadn't gone for a higher education. And the festivals had started before that. My parents were in a choir yet since 1945. So both of us grew up with singing. And at that time, the way we got together, Saskatchewan was, they wanted some young people to come from BC to participate in their events, and one was called Variety Night. So at the time, I was working at the USCC in the office, and I was also working with the youth. I was also in a girls' choir. Our Grand Forks girls had formed a nice choir, and we had all kinds of talent nights. And when the invitation came from Saskatchewan, they wanted a mixed group to come. So we had access to all these youth lists. And Grand Forks had, as it happened, Grand Forks had a lot of girls, and a lot of the guys were from the Kootenays. Mm-hmm. So that's how this group amalgamated, and that's how Walter and I met, through this mixed choir. And we went on a bus load, like that was over 40 young people, along with a couple of chaperones, Pete and Lucy Woykin and Lauren de Gossif, and it was, I guess it was our meeting place. And afterwards, that's how we got together, and we actually, the Variety Night was in March, but in those days, people, I guess they didn't waste too much time. We got married in November of 1963. So this year will be our 60th wedding anniversary. So since then, Walter was already part of the Kootenai choir, and then it was a boys' choir at first. And then they wanted, as these boys became men and they got married, and the women joined the choir. So the Kootenai choir was together for about 30 years. Wow. So that's been our life throughout. Our family life was in the choirs, in the community, and we raised our family. So that's been our life. Well, my involvement in writing in Iskra started right from the start. I always was interested in writing, especially in expressing my opinion. Doukhobor community was so important, and our faith was so important. I felt for all of us. I not only wrote, but I've said a lot of speeches, including wherever we went. Felt inspired to speak about our wonderful faith. The Bible wasn't considered a holy book, but the songs that we sang were like, we considered them like inspirational, and they taught a lesson. Well, like for instance, есть много прекрасных высоких учений. There are many wonderful teachings in this world. And why can't people get together and get along and build a better life for all of us here on our earth, because we believed in the facets, toil and peaceful life. When I was 18, I got a job at the USCC office and would come in after school and on Saturdays and do a little bit of work and then go home. After we were married, I continued writing. At first it was typing and then writing, and then I became an editorial board member. And then, I suppose, fast-tracked to about 20 years ago, we started a column, and I was one of the writers, or the one that wrote for the Kitchen Connection column in Iskra, because Doukhobors do like to eat. And it seemed that the kitchen is also always a good place to connect. Yeah. So that's what we came up with. To talk about 99, I have to talk a little bit about the other years. And the years leading up to 1999 were years that were, the Doukhobor family was in turmoil. So there was the USCC, but there was also another side, I'll call it the fanatical side, that orchestrated acts that were, we always felt it wasn't the Doukhobor true understanding, because there was a lot of destruction. So my personal family, we always felt a need, and we loved our family, and some of it was from the, say, the Sons of Freedom side, but we decided not to cover those topics when we get together and simply get together on a very personal level, and I've always loved all of my family. But some of my family, it became estranged, and there was a lot of history that happened, and in the 60s as well. Some of my Doukhobor family went to Agassiz and other parts of the lower mainland, and we didn't have much contact until later. But the USCC throughout all this went through many stages. In the background, in my background, there was also the desire that this family would come together, because I saw goodness in all sides, and we all sang Doukhobor songs. So that was our big connection. The wish always was to be able to get together. And 99, even though that's a long way from 1960s, 1999 was a special year for the Doukhobors. There was, that whole year was filled with many, many events. And ultimately, the very first event, as far as my memory works, or I think it works still, there was an interesting play at Stanley Humphreys High School, which Wendy Woykin was involved in, and it was about the New Denver children. So that introduced that part of our family more to us. We had meetings, and there was a special Sunday meeting, and a lot of the Kristova people came, and even they commented, well, why haven't we been here before? Right. They weren't able to answer why they haven't. So it was a tumultuous time, but it was also clouded in misunderstandings and mystery. Mm-hmm. And I still remember the first time going to a Malenia at the pyramid, and that was in 99, mm-hmm. and it was a Mother's Day. Yeah. And I belonged at that time to a choir. It was called Friends in Unity. And we were invited to the Mother's Day. So we had to say, or I had to, I thought, why haven't I ever been here before? So, and Walter can talk about his experience.
Yes, for sure.
With the tri-choir, because that magical moment also happened.
We have a tri-choir like Christova, Grand Forks, and Kootenays. So we got together, and the Christova men came and to the center. They were outside, and we drove up, and we came to them, shook hands, and from there on, like we were friends, and sang together, and still do.
Well, actually, today, Doukhobor is all those things that you mentioned. Prayers. Prayers are a big part of my life. And prayers like for good health, prayers for safety, prayers of gratitude. So that's sort of always like a conversation with God, I would call it. And as far as the garden goes, we've always had a garden. I had a garden growing up, but Walter's family, they were big gardeners, and Walter's grandmother, she was a healer, but she also was very strong. And she would say that you should always thank God for your garden and help the crop be for passers-by, but also for ourselves to eat lots. So that was her theory. She used to garden until she passed away. And the garden, we still live on the property that Walter initially bought in the 60s, and still grow a garden. Mm-hmm. And we still like to share. Yeah. And in fact, we had a little community garden, and we still have somebody growing, Walter's sister and her husband, and we'd like to share what we have. It's sort of something that still continues. It's kind of, I suppose it is kind of a life concept. And then a family, we try and incorporate the Christian faith, like especially the forgiveness. So that's sort of every day, because you're transgressing, in my view, almost every day. So there's a lot of forgiveness that has to happen. Sometimes it does, so we're very grateful when it does. Well, my hopes for the future, that's a very good question. Of course, my hopes for the future would be that people would still know their background, and they would be able to access any kind of information for the future generations, because there's so much goodness in there. Peace hasn't come to this world on a grand scale yet. There still is wars, and we've put in so much effort into there not being any wars, and that's what our forefathers did in Russia. They didn't want to continue with being in wars and killing each other, but there still is that. So as far as Doukhobors go, there still is lots of work to do. But I think that we should also make good friends with other like-minded people.
Снимайте оковы, давайте свободу, друг другу, брат брату, родной стороне. ведь места всем хватить разум.